Hi there and welcome to Barod's Facebook Live session, and we're going to be looking at being on the Sesh over the festival season. If you've got any specific questions, please put them in the comment box at the bottom, and after this live feed we will answer them as soon as possible. So what we're going to look at for the next 10 or 15 minutes is the logistics of attending a festival and seeing what we can do to alleviate those anxieties, stresses and strains that can improve your experience. We'll also look at a little bit around ketamine use, because that's quite a popular festival substance. It's also used quite widely on the weekends as well, so it could benefit you through just in this session as well. One of the main things I want to point out with regards to the festival season is that for some of us, we may be seasoned, hardened festival goers and know all the tricks of the trade and be able to go. But for a lot of people, it could be a completely brand new experience, whether that be from a one-day event right through to a all weekender. So if you're going, these are some of the essential tips and guides for you to kind of take on board and see what you can do with them. One of the main things I'd say is if you're a first-time goer to a festival, sometimes the excitement can be a bit too much and we get a little bit carried away and may overdo it even getting to the actual event. One of the important things is that it's really important for you to remember where you park the car, where you got off the bus, and where you go to which gate you need to be at. Sometimes if you're attending and you've already had a little bit to drink or have maybe indulged in some other substances of choice, that might be have an issue with you remembering where your car is. So when you're actually coming home at the end of the event, it's really important. Excuse me, we got a fire alarm at the moment. I'll wait for a moment till it's off. Apologies for their stopping transmission there. Had a bit of an alarm situation. So back on track. Anyway, what I was discussing was the finer points of looking at ways and means of making your festival more enjoyable. One of the points that I was initially saying was about being of good sound mind when arrival at site, so that you know where you've actually parked the car and actually where you know where your gate is. As you can imagine, if you go into an event which is of the size of about 60-70,000, there's going to be a lot of cars and very similar cars, and also a lot of similar surroundings with regards to you're in a field. One of the main things as well is how you get into the festival, which is sometimes can be quite daunting because of the size of the queues. A lot of the big events these days now have put a lot of focus on searches due to the counter-terrorism and also due to our punitive drug laws, which we still have to be mindful that drugs are illegal and to have in your possession. So what festivals do offer is an amnesty bin. Now this is for those individuals who are choosing to go to the event and take different drugs, is that you can then go to the amnesty bins and discard of any items that you may have which may be associated to drug use and also drugs. This gives you a chance if you are feeling quite nervous and a bit worried about the consequences, because to be fair, none of us want a drug charge on our charge sheets as an offences if we are looking at certain careers going on in the future. So what I would suggest is keep an eye out from the amnesty bin if you do wish to choose that route. The other thing is, which you have to be mindful of, if you are going for a long weekend, we tend to carry more drugs on ourselves than we would on a normal one-night session. So be mindful of that. This may be considered as intent to supply, so you have to be extremely cautious. Festival events are very much aware that when people go to the events, they are going to be consuming drugs and alcohol. So services are set up to support those individuals inside. So there's not always a zero tolerance approach, even if you are confronted with that on the gate. But be mindful that there is a massive risk that you do take when you do choose to carry these drugs on you. One of the main things as well is when you get into the event is to know where you are going to set your tent up. And one of the major things is that you're mindful of where you, if you are going with friends, can also meet and you have a familiar site which you can identify that you are camping along, because if you can imagine, there'd be a lot of tents and a lot of similar tents. Some advice as well that I would also give is that try and pack light, but also pack the essentials. So if you go with too much and a lot of expensive equipment and you've got your Armani outfit, try not to take the most expensive gear that you have, because unfortunately in some events across the country there are thefts, and especially if you can imagine, it's not really safe in a tent as such. So carry light, go with enough clothes and enough clothes for the bad weather. Also be aware that our climate changes quite frequently, and also you may need to have sun cream and also liquids like water for you to keep yourself hydrated. One of the other things which you do have to keep in mind is also you don't really have much access to electrical supplies. So if you are using your phone over the weekend, be mindful of your phone battery and needing your phone battery just in case of emergencies or if you need to contact others in the event. There are sometimes on some festivals where you can go and charge your phone, which comes at a charge. But also what we're seeing, what you can buy are battery banks, which allow you to charge your battery up from a portable source, which are extremely handy. The other thing I would also say is also maybe investing in a Nokia, a really cheap phone, which only has the phone app on it, so it doesn't drain your battery. They tend to have a long life battery, and also if you do lose it, it won't break the bank when you have to choose a replacement for it. Having a phone is vital in case of if you lose your friends, and you've lost your friends from the Friday then you arrive to the Monday morning, so it is absolutely essential. There are services on site such as welfare where quite potentially you may be able to charge your battery if you have all the necessary devices to be able to charge your phone. So that's essential that you do know where that is as well. Another thing is, if you do lose your friends, I'd say when you've been round the festival and you are very much aware of where you're staying, is to choose a place which is, say, in the public eye that you can meet up if you do lose your friends, and that you can go there and wait there. So if you are lost, that's the place to go. On another hand, for communications, a walkie-talkie is sometimes handy if you can keep it within your friends, because the battery life is pretty good in them, and you see a lot of people using that now. So those are essentials. Some of the issues that are quite commonplace in festivals is when people choose to use different drugs. One of the drug topics that I'm going to kind of look at now is the use of ketamine. Ketamine is a popular festival drug and is quite commonly purchased before attending the festival, but also can be purchased in the festival. When purchasing inside the festival, you have to be mindful that you probably end up paying over the odds and paying what we call festival prices. The other flip side to that is, and this also occurs when you're maybe preparing your festival weekend, is that when you're purchasing pills and powders, they may not necessarily be what you first intended that you thought they were going to be. In regards to ketamine, the purity levels do vary massively. At some events in the UK, and maybe we'll see a lot more, there is that opportunity for pill and powder testing services. Be it one of the main ones at the moment is the Loop, which provides a pill testing, which will give you the exact information that you need around the purity levels of the powder and pill that you bought, and also what is actually in there. And believe it or not, sometimes it wouldn't be what you expect. Over the last year, in last year's summer, we saw other drugs which were sold as ketamine, which weren't essentially ketamine, but were derivatives and also more harmful. So the individuals that were taking these substances were pretty much caught out on the after effects of it. Some people were finding some side effects, such as not being able to sleep up to 2 to 3 days, which, if you can imagine, can be quite unnerving and quite unsettling. One of the main things I like to be able to point out is that it's vitally important that if you do choose to take these drugs, it's good advice sometimes to go low and go slow. So start off with a small amount, and then again, if you need to top up, go with less than what you did before. One of the common terminologies that you hear within ketamine use is bumped, is when you kind of redose after the initial dose, maybe after 15, 20, 30 minutes. Always go with a smaller amount than what you did before. As you know, the effects of ketamine start within 5 to 15 minutes, depending on the purity levels. And then what you can see is that the actual effects of ketamine last for 45 to 60 minutes. But then the after effects of that can last up to 2 hours. So be really considerate when redosing and when you're looking at using. One of the major points I like to point out, is particularly with ketamine, is try not to use it with any other drugs, because that's when you can get pretty much caught out, and then may come to the attention of the medical services or also welfare if you're having, say, a bad trip from the hallucinogenic effects of the drug. In small doses, what you find with ketamine is that it's a mild sedative, and if that's what you enjoy, if you enjoy the distortion elements from the visuals, and you also enjoy the kind of anesthetic effects when you higher dose, what you've got then is the dissociative anesthetic effects, and anything above that then would potentially lead to a K-hole, is when you could lose complete use of your limbs, particularly legs, and end up collapsing. When using in groups, one of the common kind of harm reduction advice like we do when we have a designated driver, is to have a trip sitter. So basically, someone who chooses not to use on that night and will be around for anyone who needs any support or any help, and to have any comfort in, because after all, your friends who are probably going to know you best, and that's really important, particularly if you do become the attention of medical services. They can at least be able to let them know what drugs and what alcohol you may have used that night. And that's really vitally important if we're in a crisis situation and you're needing medical attention. Also, if you are feeling a little bit worse for wear, you've also got the use of most welfare services within the festivals, where you can actually go, and it's a zone to actually go and chill out and maybe talk to someone who has got experience within mental health, drugs and alcohol, or social care settings. So it's really important that you are aware and maybe familiarise yourself to know where these places are on the site maps when you do go to the festivals. Going back to ketamine then, as I was saying about the dissociative anaesthetic effects that you have, which is commonly known as a K-hole, this is when it becomes a little bit more sketchy and a bit more edgy in relation to how you are and how you may be after the event. One of the important things is like I was saying earlier on, is do not mix alcohol. I feel alcohol is one of the prime reasons why people overdose, and then also sometimes the adverse effects that we have are death from vomiting while someone is unconscious, and that is unfortunate circumstances to some of the deaths that we've had in relation to ketamine. So what we're looking at is for you to make sure that you stay safe, you have a good understanding of the harm reduction methods that you can apply when using, and also enjoy the effects when you're using these substances, and be aware. Personally, if you're a first time user of ketamine, I wouldn't choose your surroundings to be in a field surrounded by 60 to 70,000 people, as this might be overwhelming. But if you are a seasoned user of ketamine and understand the side effects and know that you're dosing, I think it's vitally important that you continue to do with what you know and not get overwhelmed and too excited with the festival vibe, as what we find is that you can go too far and party too hard. So that's partly what some of my advice that I'd like to give. If you'd like more information, more advice on these specific drugs in relation to yourselves, please feel free to contact Barod at any point, at any time, and speak to one of our drug workers here. And also, if you have any questions that you want to, as I stated at the beginning of the Facebook Live session, just pop it into the comment box at the bottom and we will get back to you. One last advice before I go. If you are going to take anything to a festival, take some toilet roll. Thank you.